Hello everyone, this is LDJ11 Gaming. I want to welcome you into this is more of an update episode for recruiting and all that, some of the top players around the nation. We're going to look at some stats. We're going to just look around the dynasty a little bit here. This is going to be a short video. It's going to come just before the Ohio Bobcats game. I just like to get everybody up to date. I showed some recruiting at the end of an episode. So now I just want to show you some of the top players in the country. So I showed you the top 10 players. As you can see here, it's still a pretty tight battle. No commitment yet from Troy Caldwell. Now you've seen Emmanuel Flournoy has committed to UNC. So the number one corner in the nation, number two player overall, is headed to UNC. You got Dominique Newkirk, the number 8 player in the nation, a wide receiver out of Marietta, Ohio, committing to Vanderbilt. And Ryan Elder, we already knew about. We're going to show you some of the quarterbacks that have committed. John Tavius Harris, a 6'4", 254-pound quarterback out of also Middletown, Ohio, is committed to Texas A&M. And John Harvey, the 5'9", 217 quarterback out of Canton, Ohio, has committed to Florida. Let's look at some of the running backs real quick. The top nation running back in nation has not committed yet. The number 2 one, Payne Agomo, he is 5'11", 212 pounds out of Colonial Heights, Tennessee, and he's staying home to go play for the Tennessee Volunteers over Notre Dame, Auburn, Alabama, LSU, Georgia, Penn State, Michigan, Ole Miss, and Arkansas. As you can see, he was highly thought of. Now, the top running back in the nation has offers from Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama, and he has interest from Virginia Tech, Navy, Missouri, West Virginia, and Minnesota. He's still got a lot of options open. Next player is Andrew Chapman. He's kind of a smaller scat back type, as you can see. Texas A&M's really got a commanding lead. They'll likely end up getting a commit, but you never know. Georgia could hop back in it. Then you got Zach Penn, who's 6'2", 211 pounds out of California. He's San Diego State so far is the only one to offer him a scholarship. PJ Pointer, a 5'11", 192-pound running back out of Alabama, has offers from USC, Alabama, and Penn State, with Georgia, Michigan still pretty much in the hunt for him. Javon Holmes, a 6'1", 222-pound back out of Missouri, who's a 4-star. He hasn't committed yet, but he has offers just from Nebraska, but Iowa State is leading the way, followed by Nebraska, then Oklahoma State, and Arkansas State's kind of far back, but could make up some ground. You got Marquise Garland here. He's got offers from Auburn, and that's it. And they've got a pretty commanding lead. The next one, Keith Hill, a 5'11", 220-pound back out of Oklahoma, is committed to Houston. We'll see how that one works out. And then Nick Owens, 6'1", 211 out of Panama City, Florida. As you can see, he's pretty well thought of, but Minnesota, Auburn, Wisconsin does have an offer for him, but they're pretty tight at top, and LSU and Michigan State are further down. We'll see what happens there. And then Day Anabanam, a 6'1", 209-pound back out of Ohio. Army's currently leading the way and the only school to offer him a scholarship. We'll see if they can hold it through and see if he ends up transferring after a little bit of time at Army, because, as you know, if they stay more than 2 years at Army into their junior season, they're stuck going in the service. That's the new rules. Receivers, as I mentioned, Dominique Newkirk's already committed to Vanderbilt. The number 2 one's Justice Walton. You got Wisconsin, Michigan State, and Iowa all in the running for him. Andrew Blackman has Texas, Army, pretty much battling it out with Texas, the only one to offer him a scholarship. You got Jordan Wright out of Alabama with Florida, Ole Miss, and Tennessee all fighting for him. Next guy, Leon Howden. He's 6'5", rail thin though at 184 pounds, out of Michigan. But he has offers from Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Penn State, and Michigan State. However, as you can see, Penn State and Michigan State are way back on the list. It looks like he's down to his final 3 of Ohio State, Michigan, and Notre Dame. We'll see what happens there. It'd be surprising if he leaves home and goes to Ohio to play for the other team. Next up is Denzel Green out of Florida. Georgia, Nebraska, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State have all offered scholarships, but it looks like he's starting to lean heavily towards Georgia. Jason Celestian, a 5'10", 191-pound receiver out of Virginia, currently has Florida State in first place, followed by Texas, Notre Dame, and they've both offered scholarships. Christian Balome, a 6', 183-pound receiver out of Sterling Heights, Michigan, Has Penn State, Wisconsin, and Texas A&M in his top three. They've all offered scholarships, and they're duking it out. And Vandy actually is still in the race, even though they haven't offered a scholarship yet. Then you got Nate Dudley Gordon, only 5'9", 175 pounds, out of California, but he's staying home to go play for UCLA. And you got Justin Graves, a 5'10", 183-pound receiver out of Georgia, looking like he's considering staying home with Georgia, the only team to offer him a scholarship. But you got Virginia Tech very close to the top, and Alabama, if they're number three, they're always within striking distance. Tight end wise, the only one to commit so far is Quentin Fuller Jr. He's 6'3", 258 pounds. He committed to TCU, and as you could see, Buffalo tried to get in the race for him, but there's just no way. We weren't a big enough school. We're too far away. You know, you got to shoot your shot every now and then, but he decided to stay and go to the state of Texas, so that way he was close to his home in Louisiana. As far as tackles go, we've seen Ryan Elder has already committed to Ole Miss. And you got Grant Jackson here, who committed to Texas, and Nolan Spector, who committed to Rutgers. As far as guards go, the only ones to commit have been Bentley Williams, who committed to Southern Miss, oddly enough, out of Florida. Jacob Young, who is out of Texas and stayed home and went to Houston. And then Darrell Bush, who committed to Northern Iowa, out of Michigan. I mean, definitely some small school surprises there with the guards at the top. You got Mike Crick-Jones, the top center in the nation, going to UCLA. He's out of Iowa, so it looks like he wanted some warmer, nicer weather. You got Evan Gallo, who decided to commit to Cincinnati. He's out of Michigan as well. And then the number 10 one in the nation is Jaquil Ashford. He's out of Arizona, and it looks like he committed to Oklahoma and try to get his foot in the door in the SEC. Keon Ford, the number 2 defensive end in the nation, committed to Iowa State out of Texas. You had Corey Gray out of Georgia, commit to UNC. You had Hadari Prince out of Florida, commit to Florida State and stay home. And you had Bailey Hughes, who is out of Mississippi. He committed to Wisconsin, so he's going to go up and play in the Big Ten. Over offers from Florida State and Georgia, which is kind of shocking. The top defensive tackle in the nation committed to Iowa, which is not a place you'd expect considering he's out of Arkansas. You'd think the SEC would dominate that list. Austin Smith, who's huge, 6'8", 339 pounds out of Louisiana, goes to Arkansas. I really thought LSU would get in on this race, but they decided not to. They're letting him leave the state. He needs a little bit of development, but I think he'll be great for the Razorbacks. Outside linebackers, you have Todd Watson, who's 6'1", 225 pounds out of California. He committed to UCLA. He's staying home. You have Connor Beto, a 6'2", 222-pound outside backer out of Texas. He's staying home, and he's going to Texas A&M. You got Gage Carbonell out of California. He's actually going to go to Michigan. He's going to take the odd path and go to Michigan, and we'll see what he can do for him. As far as middle backers, as you see, a lot of your inside backers or off-the-ball linebackers have really surprisingly already made their decision in the top 10. You have the top one, Mike Jelks, going to Nebraska. Next one, Alex Jones, going to Georgia. And then Ryan Snyder, going to Houston. Dayon Cotton, going to Alabama. To continue that tradition, you have Kevin Turner going to Wisconsin. And you got Grady Henry going to Utah. A lot of them guys have already made their decision. As I mentioned, Emmanuel Flournoy is committed to UNC. Davin Ferguson to Ohio State. Darryl Vereen to USC. We mentioned them guys earlier in the season. Jaron Eligui, who's also 5'9", another little slot corner guy committing to UNC. And then Chase Beatty's committing to Miami of Ohio. He's another small guy, but that is shocking. He had an offer from Ohio State, and he decided to go to Miami of Ohio and play in the MAC. So there's a strong chance that unless something crazy happens and Coach Kent Williams leaves Buffalo, we're going to see Chase Beatty's next year. The top safety in the nation, Caleb Weimerschurch, committed out of Indiana, committed to Michigan State. Josh Irwin, out of Florida, committed to Florida State. Zach Tate IV, out of California, stayed home, went to UCLA. And Cameron Milner, who's decently sized at 6'2", out of California, stayed home and went to USC. As far as strong safeties go, the only one to make his decision final is Colton Kaminsky. He's 6'3", 216 pounds out of Superior, Wisconsin, and he decided to go to Iowa State over Wisconsin. However, Wisconsin never actually came in with a final offer for him. And now let's look at the athletes, everybody's most favorite players out there because they can do multiple things. The top athlete in the nation, Derek Clark, committed to Arkansas. Cameron Costin, who's 6'2", 265 pounds, committed to Miami of Ohio. So we are going to see him as well. And then number 10 one, Rodney Milton, who's another big man, likely going to be either an O lineman or a D tackle, has decided to commit to Texas A&M out of Washington. So we'll see how that goes. And since we didn't take a look at top 25 polls at the end of our last video, because I was planning on doing a little update video, the Georgia Bulldogs are still number 1, followed by Wisconsin, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, Florida State. No change there in top 5. At number 6, you can see Stanford climbed from 7. North Carolina's up to 7. Michigan dropped down to 8, even though they didn't lose. They do have a loss, though. Number 9's Florida, and number 10's Ohio State with their 2 losses. 11 is Texas. 12 is Tennessee. 13 is Houston, who just lost to number 19 ranked Navy. Number 14 is Nebraska. 15 is Iowa, who just lost to Ohio State, and they dropped from 11 to 15. Rutgers at 5-0 moves up to number 16. Army at 6-0 is all the way up to number 17. Arkansas at 18. 19 is Navy, who's also 4-0 after beating Houston, as I mentioned. Washington moves up 20. UCLA up 21. 22 is USC, who just happened to lose to Washington. 23 is Michigan State, who just lost to number 5 Florida State. 24 is South Carolina, who just lost in overtime to Arkansas. And 25 is Penn State, who just lost to Nebraska. So nobody dropped out of the top 25. However, you can see the other teams in the running. You have Oregon, Mississippi State, San Diego State, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Oklahoma, Toledo, Washington State, and Cincinnati all still in the run-in for this. We'll take a look at the Heisman standings now. Cody Galea moves into the top spot out of Notre Dame. He has 17 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, completing 61% of his yards, and he also added 4 more touchdowns on the ground. James Roberts, a running back out of Stanford, is up to number 2. He was in the preseason polls. They expected him to be good. He's averaging 6.3 yards a carry, 107 yards a game. He has 6 rushing touchdowns and 4 receiving touchdowns. I feel like that's a little high for only having 10 touchdowns on the season, but, it is harder for running backs to put up quarterback stats, and you do have to keep them in it. So you have Jake Pullman coming in at number 3. He was in the preseason one. He was the guy that I was really shocked about, and his stats still don't stack up to Heisman for me. He has 7 rushing touchdowns and 8 passing touchdowns, 5 picks. He's only averaging, close to 300 yards a game, but I just feel like it's a little early, and they're hyping this kid up, and he's not ready for it yet. Dalton Hamilton, who was first place last week, has dropped to number 4. He has 13 passing touchdowns, 2 picks, 1,600 yards, completing almost 70% of his passes, and he added 4 rushing touchdowns on the ground. Josh Robinson is at number 5 for the Georgia Bulldogs. We've seen this cat live. He is amazing. He had a great second half comeback against us. He has 14 passing touchdowns to just 1 pick, completing 68.5% of his passes, and he added 3 rushing touchdowns on the ground. This dude's legit. We'll see what happens. We're going to jump all the way back to week 1. I'm going to show you all the players of the week that have happened so far for the NCAA, and then I'll take you through the MAC the same way. We've got Elijah Hawkins, a corner for Wake Forest, winning the Defensive Award week 1, and sophomore quarterback Brady Roberson out of Washington State. In week 2, we had Jack Allen, a junior halfback out of UCLA, winning it, and Aziz Simpkins, a corner who's a senior redshirt from West Virginia, winning it. Week 3 was Des Slayton, a junior free safety, and Cody Galea, the junior quarterback who's leading the Heisman right now. Week 4, Jake Pullman makes his appearance on offense, and for defense was Ellen Vallejo. Week 5, you had Dalton Hamilton making his appearance, and Nick Rush on the defensive side from Oklahoma. Week 6, you have Matt Patterson III, a senior redshirt corner from Vanderbilt, and Josh Lukehart, a quarterback from Nebraska, making an appearance. In Week 7, you have the quarterback of the UCLA Bruins, Devontae Stewart, making an appearance, and Caden Tecklenburg, a right outside linebacker for UNLV, making an appearance with a big game in the win over Hawaii. Now we're going to flip it over to the MAC, and we're going to start right in week one. It was two Western Michigan players. It was Kurt Thomas and Jalen Hawkins. Week two, you had Blake Bykrinski. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. He's a halfback for Bowling Green, and Bo Johnson, a corner from Northern Illinois. Week three, seen Matt Bolding do it, a freshman corner for NIU, and a quarterback Michael Wright from Miami of Ohio. Week four, you seen the wide receiver from Miami of Ohio get the award, Jordan Smith, and on defense, another Miami of Ohio player, Kadarius Houston, takes home Defensive Player of the Week. Week five, you had Jason Leahy, a right outside linebacker from Kent State, and quarterback from Akron, Parker Spencer. Week six, you've seen Shane Redman, a quarterback from Western Michigan, win it, and Devin Diggs, another Miami of Ohio player, wins it at corner. And then week seven, you've seen Jaquan Ross, rebounds after his injury from us and a big win over Kent State, and has a fantastic day to take home Player of the Week in week seven. And on defense, you had John Meade, a left outside linebacker, also from Central Michigan, have a huge day against Kent State and takes home Player of the Week honors. We're going to take a look at just some NCAA stats real quick. We're going to look at passing, rushing, receiving, probably some sacks, stuff like that, see how everything shakes out. The leading passer is John Leafu out of Arkansas State, followed by Cody Galea, Billy McDowell, Brady Roberson, Bruce Siemba, Xavier Alexander, Dimitri Oliver, Dalton Hamilton, Austin Walston, Michael Wright, Patrick DeVito, Jalen McGill, Juan Imianeta, Aim Onetti, that was a tough one, Juan Amanetti, Jace Smith, Gavin Adkins, and Josh Robertson, and Killian Howard. The passing touchdown leader is Killian Howard from Penn State, who's a sophomore quarterback, Bruce Siemba from Texas A&M, followed by Dimitri Oliver and Brady Robertson. John Leafu and Cody Galea follow that at 17. With 16, you have Brian Wilson, a quarterback out of Oregon. With 15, you got Braylon Scott, the quarterback out of ECU. And 14, you got Josh Robinson and Michael Wright. Colin Lawler out of Ohio State. For rushing yards, the leading rusher is Jimmy Parr, a halfback for BYU, followed by Dorian Banks, a halfback out of NC State. And then there's a drop off to Kenny Brown at Penn State, Joshua Eakins out of Rutgers, Levi Scott at Arizona State, and Joe Taylor out of Tulane. Yards per carry wise, with guys that have decent amount of carries. I mean, you look 21 carries, that's impressive for 9.5 yards a carry and a touchdown. That's impressive. 49, averaging 8.2. This is also out of Miami of Ohio. Anthony Irving. You got Matt Anderson with 43 carries, Blake Powell at quarterback. But look at Levi Scott. He's averaging 7.4 yards a carry with over 100 carries. And look, here's our guy that just burned us. He was tough. Marquise Rashad. He was tough against us for Ball State, and he's averaging 7.4 yards a carry with 410 yards on the season. He's been really good. Ball State would be good to lean into him. Kenny Brown has over 100 carries and is averaging 7.3 yards per carry with 7 touchdowns. That's impressive. Kevon McNeil out of Eastern Michigan is also having a pretty good year, averaging 7 yards a carry. Touchdown-wise, the leader's Jack Allen with 10, followed by Dorian Banks, Tony Timmons, Bence McLean, Sean Pickett, Joshua Eakins, Kevon McNeil, Deion Stanford, Gerald Gauss, Anthony Hutchings. The leading receiver as far as catches goes to Taylor Marshall of Army. Never would have guessed that. He has 57 receptions on the season, followed by Brian Harris of Oregon State, Ed Foreman of Virginia, and Jacoby Red of Texas Tech. Reed Finnegan of Southern Miss, Adam Wright of Washington State, and I'm just going to kind of scroll and show you a few different names and just kind of let you see a few players' names here at the top of the leaderboard as far as receptions go. As far as yards, Taylor Marshall also leading the nation in yards, followed by Brian Harris, Ed Foreman, Jacoby Red, Jalen Giovanelli made an appearance, Justin Height, Reed Finnegan, Michael Spurbeck, a tight end for Maryland. And I'm going to scroll and do the same thing and show you a few more players and let you see their names. You can pause it. You can look at them. I'm going to try to see if I can get this into a franchise file and just kind of sim their careers and see what happens. I don't want to have a whole lot of control. It's going to be a Madden franchise, of course, but that's for another day. Deontay Snoddy averaging 22.7 yards per reception. That's impressive. Mike Jones, a tight end at Wake Forest, is averaging 20.9. That's impressive, man. That's really impressive. Mario Brous, a wide receiver who's 6'6", 211 pounds at Penn State, has 9 touchdown receptions. He's a 99 overall player. He's legit. A tight end with 8. Out of Coastal, Derek Richards. Ed Foreman at Virginia with 8. Juan Edwards at Washington with 8. Justin Height at Florida State. Chris Seal at Iowa. Kyrie Thomas at Baylor. Reed Finnegan at Southern Miss. Taylor Marshall at Army. Jacoby Red at Texas Tech, like I mentioned. Shazim Mazel, a tight end at UTEP with 7. And look at that. Trey Lanford, next on the list at Georgia. He had a pretty good second half against us. He's got 6 touchdown catches on the year, averaging 15.2 yards a catch, 427 yards, and 28 receptions. We're going to flip this over to the defense real quick. The big thing I'm curious about, tackle for loss. You got Jamal Ross, a backer for Purdue. You got Angelo Shanley, a defensive end for Tulane, followed by Ian Cleveland from Mississippi State, Kyle Saunders of Tennessee. As far as sacks go, the leading sacker is Luke Bush, a freshman at Tennessee. That's an impressive start to your career. Number 2 is Angelo Shanley at Tulane, followed by Keith Van Lanen, a freshman as well at Florida, a freshman. Cam Ball at Hawaii, Kajon Brown at Texas, Henry Owens at Nevada, and then Nico Okawara at Tulane. Ish White is a defensive tackle with 4.5 sacks out of Ohio State. You got some pretty good ones, and we're going to scroll through here real quick and just show you a few more names like what I've done and just try to show off a few players. Get their names out there so that way if they show up later, you have an idea who they are. 2 guys have 5 picks. That's the top one's Kurt Thomas, Western Michigan. We really are going to have to watch out for him if we play him. Matt Patterson, the third, will be the one directly after that from Vanderbilt with 5 picks. Followed by Leon Pope at Temple. John Michael Randolph at Army. Army is truly having a great season. Jason Leahy at Kent State. And Christian Azua out of Fresno State. And I'll scroll and show you a few more names here. And that'll about do it for showing you around the nation a little bit as far as stats go. And I want to show you a few injuries. I'll try to keep you updated with some quarterbacks. But as far as our team goes, Scott Parker with that abdominal tear is going to miss at least 3 weeks. That's kind of a big loss, but we'll see if we can overcome it. And at quarterback, I like to show off the quarterback injuries, especially ones that I'll stop and mention. But I'll scroll through and show some for you. But you can see a big one is Devin Linwood. He's out for 5 weeks. He's one of the top quarterbacks in the nation. Blake Powell at Stanford, a junior who could likely go pro, dislocated his elbow. He's a 95 overall. And that's it for injuries. We'll finish by just showing you the side-by-side comparison, and we'll kind of leave it here and see how everything goes. As you can see, Ohio's pretty equal with us, but points per game, all that stuff, we're not doing much better than them. As far as total offense goes, they're beating us. Total defense, we're doing better than them. It's been a tough season for the Bulls, but they're on the winning side right now. We'll see what happens. We got a couple prospects visiting next week, and we're really excited to get them in here and hopefully get them committed to the Bulls. And so, thank you for taking some time watching our overall update of the Dynasty file. I try to keep you guys updated. I want you to get immersed in everything and see some of the other players. So this is LDJ11 Gaming. Thank you very much for watching the video. Have a great day. Please like and subscribe. Appreciate you watching.